It is time. Welcome to today's webinar on avoiding AI's negative impact on customer relationships, brought to you by CCW Digital and Sutherland. I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW, and your host for today's discussion. We all hear commentary about how AI is going to augment humanity, that it's going to lead to stronger connections and better relationships. And yet, when we dive deep into customer data, when we listen to their concerns, not to mention the concerns from employees, we hear some pessimism around that. We hear some fear about whether this AI gold rush is truly going to lead to enhanced customer connections, better value, more empowering environments, or if it's just going to lead to everything being generic, everything being automated, everything being moved out of the way of conversational and leveled down just to transactional. If we care about the state of customer contact, if we want to continue competing on the customer experience, if we want to go beyond just answering questions and actually providing meaningful support that builds long-term relationships, we cannot let this pessimism rule. We cannot let this negative anticipation of AI come to fruition. Instead, we need to be sure that we're designing a human-centric journey and then using the technology to elevate that humanity, using it to generate the truest version of value from customer contact, using it to remain confident that the connection, above all, is the pathway to success. Now, recently, CCW Digital and Sutherland partnered on a research report diving into the role of AI in customer relationships. We did in-depth data looking at how today's customer contact leaders are setting their priorities, how they're measuring and evaluating their success, and how they see AI factoring into the future when they think about things like empathy and proactive care and understanding what customers really want. All that data is available in the research report. Make sure you download it. It's totally free and will give you everything you need to know to navigate humanity and customer contact in 2026. But in this webinar, we're going to dive into some of the highlights. And more importantly, we're going to talk through what they mean. How can we use these findings to empower each and every one of you to set your customer contact function on the right path, to know how to balance AI and human workers, to know how to understand what your customers are going through, and most importantly, to know how to truly connect with those. And I'm not going to be doing so alone. I love to talk. I have a lot of data to share, but I also love getting outside perspectives from someone who is spending time hearing what you in this industry are talking about, figuring out how to work with you to navigate these questions, figuring out what it takes to go from wanting to connect with customers to making those customers part of your DNA and making connections paramount for your organization. So Sriram, I want to get a chance to know you, I'll get your background, your role. So tell us about yourself as we get started here.
Hey, Brian, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Sriram Panjapakesan. I run the CME, Telecom, Media, Entertainment, and Technology verticals for Sutherland. I'm based out of Chicago, and I run the complete digital CX solutions for Sutherland and also the technology service offering we do for our customers.
Awesome. And I think, again, one of the biggest things is we know the technology's there, right? We know that there's been so much innovation. When you think of some of the challenges we've had, be it related to automating key processes, uncovering key data, giving employees what they need to be successful. We know from a pure innovation standpoint, a lot of the right technology is there. It exists. It's attainable. It can be done. But if you don't pair that with the right vision, the right metrics, the right understanding of how it factors into your environment, then you do make those risks of everything becoming more generic and robotic and transactional, they start to become reality. And so what we need to think about, and what I'm so glad to tap into your perspective, is when you think about taking technology from a concept to a real world deployment, to a real world thing that's going to affect employees and customers, is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? And I know you're going to have a lot of insights throughout the conversation to share. So in terms of an agenda for today, we're going to start by really looking at first highlights from the research we did. We're so thrilled of how in depth we went when it came to understanding. We can all say we're competing on the customer experience. We can all say it's a value center, not a cost center. But what does that really mean as far as what we're trying to measure, what's standing in our way of success, and how we use technology and human-centric thinking to get where we want down the road? We're going to then close with a Q&A as well as some final action tips that will really let us know, what does this all mean? What can we learn? And how can we put these lessons, not only so it makes for an entertaining webinar, but instead how it makes for a blueprint for everyone here achieving their goals, everyone here building better connections. So extremely thrilled to dive in here. Can't wait to dive into the data, and let's start with that. So There's some good news here. At the very high level, we were thrilled with what the survey shows as far as how today's leaders are thinking about customer contact. So we certainly know that budget is a factor. We know that cost is a factor. In fact, 90% of customer contact leaders say going into the year, they're facing cost pressures. They're being asked to do more with less. They're being asked to do, even more than they ever have, in some cases with more control, more scrutiny than they ever have previously. And that can certainly be challenging. But it's not coming at the expense of customer centricity. It's not coming at the expense of the idea that the contact center needs to do more than just put out some fires. It needs to be the fuel that builds lasting relationships. When we ask people the biggest ways that their customer contact function is being evaluated, number one is customer satisfaction, and number two is customer retention. So yes, they want those conversations to go well, whether it's driven in a chatbot environment, whether it's a live agent over the phone, whether it's a combination of different channels. It needs to answer the customer's questions on their term. It needs to make them feel heard, respected, and trusted. But perhaps even bigger than that, it needs to drive lasting relationships. It cannot just be, I technically answered that question correctly, so we did our job. No, the customer contact function's role is to take an inquiry, take an opportunity, and turn it into a connection, a relationship, one that can be measured through retention, through loyalty, through lifetime value, so extremely important. And with that, and something that I find very exciting and very compelling here, is that the number three area was uncovering actionable intelligence. So this idea that we're not just looking at, okay, did we answer the questions correctly and accurately, but did we learn something that can fuel better understanding of our customers, better understanding of our business, and better ability to design customer-centric practices? When we think of that ability to uncover intelligence, that's going to be so key. I hear some people talk about intelligence as the most important export of the contact center, and clearly the majority of organizations are starting to buy into that principle. They know that you're on the front lines, you're hearing from customers. You need to take that information and make it a driving force for your experiences. Now, we want that. We agree with that. I don't think anyone here is going to say, no, I don't think the contact center is valuable. But unfortunately, we are seeing some bottlenecks that suggest it's not happening right now. Over the last year, and this is a very troubling stat, 60% of consumers actually say the customer experience has gotten worse. So even as we escape that pure cost center stigma, even as we say satisfaction and relationships are the top priority, we're actually seeing customers more and more upset. And they're citing a combination of common issues like long wait times and impersonal interactions and a lot of friction, as well as some newfound ones like difficulty navigating AI, difficulty reaching a live person. And so you put all that together, and we are seeing some movement in the wrong direction. Now, when we start to figure out beyond, hey, maybe their standards are getting too high, or maybe they're still uncertain about new technology, two areas that really exacerbate the challenge we have right now. One is that only 12% of customer contact leaders say that they've meaningfully resolved last year's top issues. So it's customers have these issues that they keep coming to the contact centers with. Contact centers are maybe answering them in the moment, but they're not proactively preventing them from happening in the future. They're not really optimizing their experiences so these issues go away. And if customers have to keep coming to you time after time with the same question, the same complaint, the same frustration, then you don't come across as really caring about that relationship. You don't come across as building a strong connection to that customer. You don't come across as customer centric. And in a similar vein, only 16% feel that they're actually mitigating root causes. So again, we want to show that we're connected to our customers and we understand them, but we're not taking actions that show we actually know what's troubling them and we want to make things better. It's time and time again the same complaint. And if that's going to be happening, then even if you get slightly friendlier or slightly more digitally savvy or slightly more organized when supporting them, the heart of that relationship, you don't know what's bothering them and you don't know how to fix it, that's going to ring true and that's going to lead to some frustration. Now, what's causing this, right? Why is it that we want to be customer centric, yet our data shows that we're not? Well, there are a lot of challenges that were identified in the research, but three that are worth highlighting here. First and foremost, limited intelligence about customers and their preferences. So the majority of companies right now concede that they don't have predictive intelligence about what customers are looking to achieve, what they want to intend, and how they're going to go about achieving that intention. If you can't anticipate customers' needs, obviously you can't reduce friction. You don't show that you know them or commit to the relationship. You don't emphasize personalization. And you don't offer the opportunity to make recommendations for the future. You can't say, in the spirit of a great relationship with you, here's what I would do next, or here's something that will make sense for you, or here's how you can avoid these problems in the future. And when you can't do that, you can't really say that you're connected to them. You can't elevate that lifetime value. You're just in response mode. Now, to make things even more concerning, because I know that predictive intelligence, yes, that may seem ambitious for some people out there. But the majority also say they don't even have robust profile data that's being distributed on the front lines. Now, if you don't even have data about who this customer is and what they're dealing with, you're not going to have a personalized conversation. It's not going to come across as human, whether that service is being delivered by a bot or a human agent. And so if you're not delivering that, you can understand why there's a perception that relationships are not where they need to be. We also know that there's considerable operational friction. So stop me if you've heard this before, but disconnected systems and silos and technology fragments, these are still affecting the majority of organizations. Now, if they're affecting them 20 years ago, when maybe you're in one or two or three contact channels, imagine the impact now when you have customers interacting with your brand in so many different ways, when they're using a combination of AI and humans to get support, when they're passively interacting with you on social, when they're directly over the phone or in person or over email. If all that doesn't come together in a cohesive journey, you have no real chance of elevating that relationship. You don't have the context for who the customer is. You don't know what they're looking for. And that's going to trickle down in the form of a bad experience. And then even if you figure all that out, right now, for all the talk about augmenting the human workforce, more than 80% of organizations say their employees are still spending too much time on low value work. And so the promise of AI, while it can certainly start to eliminate some of this work, it hasn't quite done so yet. And so employees are being asked to do more. They're being asked to be more consultative, more conversational, more human. And yet they're still bogged down by a lot of the same frustrations, a lot of the same inefficiencies. That's going to hurt their ability to provide a meaningful connection. So put yourself in the customer's shoes, right? You're a customer who has what you think to be a pretty high stakes and serious issue. You're forced to use that chatbot. It doesn't give you the answer you're looking for. You go back and forth. You finally get to that live agent. You're told, okay, now I'm meant to talk to someone who is going to truly empathize with me, truly connect with me, truly understand me, and truly solve the problem. But they're still so distracted by everything they're going through. They have to access all these frustrating systems. They don't have a lot of context about who you are. They don't come across as any more human. They don't come across as any more of an expert. So now you've gone through a more convoluted journey and gotten no more value out of it. Can you be surprised that that customer doesn't feel like the relationship is as strong as it needs to be? So we don't just want this to be Brian sharing the negative stats and getting all agitated about the state of customer contact. We want this to be moving in the right direction. So what are some of the things that our research surfaced that we can start to do to make this better? Well, first and foremost, one of the key areas that we want to be looking for is really committing to the right version of empathy. So really not only treating empathy as this kind of mysterious, all-encompassing word, kind of empty buzzword that just speaks to a more human experience, but really determining what it looks like and, more importantly, how it can be achieved with the balance between humanity and AI. So right now, the good news is that 96% of customer contact leaders do call empathy a priority for this year, and 57% call it a top priority. And there's expanding interest in the idea of empathy. So it's no longer just, yeah, I'd love to be empathetic, but I have 47 other things to do first. No, this is the heart of customer contact. When we want to focus on building relationships and driving lifetime value, we know that we need to be more empathetic. So how do we get there? And what does it really mean? Well, the key here is that for most companies, empathy is not just saying, I'm sorry. It's not just empty remorse or, looking like you really care about the customer. It's adapting to the context and the emotion of that situation. So yes, when a customer is going through a hard time, when they, lost their job and they're having trouble making a payment on the bill, empathy in that case is finding a way to make things work for them and showing that you want to support them and have their back. But when that customer is in a bind, they're trying to submit a project by a deadline and they can't access the project management tool that you're working on, empathy in that case is get them the answer they need as quickly as possible without disruption. And that opens the door for really using AI in an empathetic way where you can automate so much of that friction that would prevent them from what they're looking for, that they can get what they're looking for faster in the context that matters for them. And so again, the goal here is not how can we use AI to simulate a supposedly heartfelt, emotional conversation. It's instead, let's design an entire journey that always gets the customer what they need in context. And then how can we then use AI to get when they need something quickly, consistently, straightforward, how can we use AI to get them that information then? And then if they do need to have a more heartfelt human conversation with the person, how can we ensure they can quickly get to the right person who can understand them and adapt accordingly? So think of empathy as adapting to what the customer's going through, not an outbound profession of how sorry or how much you care. You're going to prove how much you care by the action you take and how valuable and easy that interaction is. And that's the foundation on which relationships are built. Now, we also want to look at how we make empathy a reality while also still starting to think about some efficiencies that we can create. And this is really where customer intelligence comes into play. So, a phrase that the Sutherland team uses is really looking at intelligence as the bridge between empathy and efficiency. It's one we at CCW Digital wholeheartedly support as well, because on the one hand, you can't even begin to think about empathy if you're still subjecting customers to the same old problems, the same impersonal service, the same friction. And we know from the prior slide that right now, a lot of organizations don't have the data they need. So if we first start to look at how AI can increase the conversational nature of our touch points, better extract, analyze, and democratize the data that we're capturing, that's going to lead to better journey design, more efficiency, remove some of that friction. Then from that point, we can work with that AI human collaboration where AI can feed humans with, here's the context of this customer, here's what you should do to make this interaction more dynamic. And then humans can say, well, this is what AI is saying, but my experience talking to this customer says they need this. So you can retrain, you can recode, you can rescore the information you're looking for. So it's ultimately about creating a culture where data drives your decisions, data drives your behaviors, data drives your experience design. When it's rooted in what the customer really wants, you stop being a brand that provides service to them and you start being a brand that connects with them. And that's when you start to achieve those wholehearted goals like satisfaction, relationships, loyalty, lifetime value, and so on. So obviously, given that this is a priority for Sutherland, I'm sure we're going to dive into that in this next Q&A with Sriram. But I want to first really start to talk about the high level, this notion of value in the contact center, right? Because we define the idea of looking at, satisfaction and retention and loyalty, but we also know there are business realities and we know customers aren't really feeling it. So how do you, from your perspective, reconcile this notion that everyone says they want to do it, customers don't really feel like it's happening?
No, thanks for that question, Brian, and some very insightful findings from your research. See, to address the question, while everybody wants satisfaction, retention, and loyalty, the key challenge we find is that are they making the prioritization based on the eyes of the customer or from the internal needs of business? And in most cases, you will find that it's done through needs of the internal business, and which is where the challenge starts. If you look at it, everybody invests in CX transformation and they are measuring CX on a broad basis. But the question is, are they measuring it at critical moments of truth, which is your refund process, escalation process, retention process, and so on and so forth? These are the friction heavy processes. And have you designed your customer journey for these processes in an efficient manner? And in most cases, you will find the answer to be no. I'll give a couple of customer examples. This is one customer we've been working with for a long time. They've been measuring retention for a long time, and we were compensated on the retention. At some point of time, they realized that while that measure will continue to be there, they wanted to maximize customer experience over retention. They said, hey, prioritize CX over retention after quite a few years. The second similar example is another customer works with small, medium business, very small businesses where they have the products being used. They think of the customer during the renewal time, when the customer comes to them about renewal. Sometimes the customers are disappointed because I haven't got the maximum use of the product. While all along they have the information about how the customer is using the product using telemetry during the period of the whole year, they're not reaching out to the customer to see, hey, you bought this product, you're not using it effectively. How can we help you use it more effectively so that you get maximum value from the product? So the key question is, are we thinking about the customer through the journey? And are we thinking about their value that they are receiving over the lifetime of using our products? And these are things earlier maybe it was not well designed because we were not able to have access to the data during the life of the product usage, but today we have access to every bit of information from the customer, and we can design these process a lot more customer centric and more effective. So I would say that's the problem. From the perspective of value at scale, we need to reimagine these processes, especially the friction heavy processes in that context of customer.
Yeah, I think you hit on a few really important points there, and one of which is what I sometimes call mirage metrics or focusing on sort of the wrong outcomes. And I think we've all known that efficiency is an area where we sometimes create a scenario where we have to choose between do we be more customer centric or we be more efficient, forgetting that a lot of the things that really drive up costs are not us being too nice to our customers. It's all the stuff that is creating friction and red tape and bureaucracies within our organization that end up not only creating more cost and more time wasted, but actually hurt the customer experience as well. So instead of you look at like, what does the customer want? You're automatically going to find a lot of opportunities to simultaneously reduce costs, but actually deliver value on the customer's terms as well. So, but I think another one that you said that's even more profound, if you will, is not looking at retention as an end all be all, right? Because I think retention is good, right? You're like, okay, we're keeping our customers, we're making more money off them. That should be inherently good. But retention doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of the relationship. There are plenty of industries, plenty of products, plenty of scenarios where I, as a customer, will probably maybe stay if I'm not super furious because it's like it can be hard to switch. It can be a lot of friction and like I'm okay with how things are. But if I'm not really loyal, if I'm not really passionate about the service experiences I'm having, two things could happen. One, you're at the very least, you might miss out on opportunities to create more proactive renewals and upsells and cross sells because you're not really getting my true loyalty. You're getting my tolerance, but I'm not that excited to hear from you. I'm not opening your emails. I'm not picking up your sales calls. I'm just not canceling my account. And so you miss on chances to grow the relationship. Two, you also don't defend yourself against better competition. So right now, yeah, maybe you don't have any competitors, but tomorrow, if another competitor comes along who is, offering a cheaper product or a better product or better service, suddenly you could see people losing. And I think we saw this happen. I mean, one of the industries we spotlighted within this report was utilities. And we actually saw this happen in many ways with the cable sphere, right? It used to be, okay, if you want to watch TV, you have to have cable. So there's no real standard to, and there's really only one provider in most areas. So there's no real standard to, elevate your customer service. There's no standard to think about passionate loyalty. As long as they're not quitting and canceling because they still want to watch TV, you're fine. Well, then streaming platforms came along and then alternatives came along, and suddenly that could no longer be taken for granted. And so you want to start to remember that no industry is going to be forever assured against churn, assured against attrition. The only way you can do to defend that is to start to build real relationships. Now, again, this is easy to say, right? Don't think of retention as the end all be all. Don't mistake efficiency in the wrong way. Don't put your priorities ahead of the customer. But we can say that. We have to be able to manage that, and be able to manage that, we have to start to measure that. So what are maybe some more practical metrics that you think speak to some of these more important outcomes we want to be looking for?
Yeah, from a contact center perspective, the value can be measured in a multidimensional way. Customer loyalty is, of course, one area we measure. You measure the NPS and so on. The second one is the average revenue per customer or business growth, which is through cross sell, upsell that you are able to generate, which is also a strong measure of how well your contact center is performing. Operational efficiency, CX and cost are not mutually exclusive. If rightly designed, they are coexistent and correlated, and we should do that. So the operational efficiency is definitely an important measure. Human empowerment. End of the day, you are running your customer experience center to drive customer value and also the employee value. So it is a very important measure as well. And last but not the least is the strategic insight. You have a ton of data and insights if you harness it right, which can be a feedback into your services, your products, your services, and the processes you run. So all of these can go towards, if fed back right into the organization, can help you to improve your products, improve your services, and get improved customer revenue. So I think all of these are extremely important ones. I think we focus on probably one or two metrics more than the others, which is like the cost to serve, but we need to focus on many of these other soft measures as well. I think I think looking at the value from the contact center in a holistic way, looking at your retail channels, your online channels, your customer experience channels through which you generate revenue, looking at it in a holistic way to see the entire cost to serve will be another useful measure.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to start to really think about how your feel of a great experience can be quantified because we one of the reasons why I think historically there's almost been a little bit of a resistance to that above and beyond experience is the feel that some of it might be overkill. Some of it might be, not everyone needs to be like Disney. Not everyone needs to be like, that famous Zappos story of having someone on the phone for 10 hours. And so we think, okay, that's all good, that's all heartfelt, but for my business, it's about transactions, about keeping on track. And the truth is that there's a happy medium there. There are certainly cases where there might be overkill, but the reality is that good experiences can drive real value. And I think what we want to be looking at is what are some other measures beyond just satisfaction score, callback rate, first contact resolution that really speak to are we being good or are we being great and relationship driven? And so I really like that perspective. Just try and look at how loyal is your customer? How are your behaviors on the phone or in the chat leading to them wanting to spend more or advocate more? And what can we do to drive those right behaviors is really key. Now, all this being said, all this idea of value in generating more loyalty, we also, at the end of the day, have to go back to that stat I started the presentation with, which is that 90% of leaders say they're facing cost pressures. Cost realities don't go away because you and I are on a webinar saying focus on loyalty and relationships. And so but the good news is though, that some of those costs don't have to come at the expense of a great customer experience. Instead, as I alluded to, some of those costs are the reason why experiences aren't good. So maybe what are some of the barriers or inefficiencies you see that are simultaneously making contact centers more expensive and hurting customer relationships? Whereas if we were to address those, we would actually make everyone happy.
So I think you alluded to it at the beginning of your research findings. I think today, if I look at it, some of the cost drivers are also the customer satisfaction challenge drivers. And the first one is siloed systems and data. If I look at, any industry, but for that matter, telecom industry, your CRM systems, your billing systems, and some of the other data are highly disconnected, siloed, and your agents are not effectively able to address your customers' questions well. So they will have to toggle across multiple systems, provide insights leading to slower resolution and irritated customers. The second one is some of the processes and policies are very rigid. They are not done with the customer in mind, but more done with their internal process. And this creates a lot of friction in the process. And even the agents are feeling disempowered because the customers are having a go at them because they are unhappy. Legacy technology itself is a problem, but that goes very close to the first one we talked about. I'll talk about the inefficient knowledge management. For example, there's a ton of data, there's a ton of insight which the agents can harness if it is with a lot of AI technology available today. If we can provide a solid knowledge management platform to them in which they don't have to look through 10 different documents to research and answer a customer query, but in a more consumable Q&A form, the agents will be a lot more effective. So that is another challenge area where the experience is taken down. And then finally, I think both the automations are highly underleveraged and the data definitely is underleveraged. We have a tremendous amount of customer insights sitting across the systems and from the past calls and all of that, and we do not look at those things. And we and every time it is either a journey for the customer, which is annoying that they'll have to repeat a lot of stuff, or they will have to clarify on the intent of their calling and so on. So I feel these are some of the biggest challenge areas to do with empowering the agent to do with siloed systems and poor leverage of data and automation.
Yeah, and I think those are all key. And I think when that really speaks to the heart of the fact that it's not just about, oh, we want to be more customer centric. So here's all the things we have to add. Here's all the new costs and investments we have to endure. It's frankly, right now, we are creating so many barriers just to do the bare minimum that if we overcome those barriers, we're going to open up so much opportunity, so much resourcing, so much cost that delivering a great experience becomes not only very attainable, but frankly, more cost efficient. I think when you talk about things like knowledge, you hit the nail on the head there. That said, I don't want to just take a review of what are all the challenges right now. I think that's if there's one mistake we sometimes make as a community, it's that we go on these webinars, we do these reports, and it's what are all the challenges? Oh, fragmented systems, inadequate knowledge, and we say, how do we solve those? And the truth is that solving them just gets us to a slightly better version of where we are now. But if we're trying to compete on the customer experience, if we're trying to go beyond answering questions and building relationships, we want to be thinking bigger. We want to be thinking about actually new value we can create, new ways to define relationships with customers. So when you start to think about investment opportunities and process changes, what is your vision to not only correct everything that's wrong right now, but maybe take us to that next level?
I think there's one great opportunity in front of every organization right now with the rate at which AI is changing the world. The opportunity is it's one thing to go and incrementally apply your AI solution, automation solution everywhere, but that's not going to be the most efficient and effective way because you're going to do a lot of patchwork. An opportunity for customers is to reimagine, uh, which will be true for the next few years to come. Reimagine your customer experience processes in the world of virtual agents and human agents operating in tandem. Because that is when you can relook at your entire process as to where it is most optimal with virtual agents, where they are rule based, simpler processes, and where your human agents will come in most handy with a lot of automation tools and knowledge tools to be effective for the customers. If you can reimagine this process, two things that will come out of this would be you will get the most efficient cost model by identifying which processes render themselves beautifully to full automation and which processes are have high friction, high need for human empathy, where a human in the loop with proper automation to aid them and knowledge empowerment and data empowerment can create significant value. So I would call that as the first investment and a very worthy investment to reimagine your process and redraw the customer journey in the world of virtual agents and human agents. The second area where I would like to look at investment is how to break the system silos and how to break the data silos more than the system silos, because system silos could be broken to some extent with automation. How do you break the data silos and create a seamless information roadmap for your agents to effectively address the customers? Because that's where the customer gets the maximum value. If you are empowered with every data point about them, when you address it, whether it's for your own benefit of revenue through cost, through upsell, cross sell, or to drive the customer satisfaction by providing them a much better long term value from your products and services. So that's a data would be the second biggest area I would do. All other things, the AI automation, omni-channel integration, and some of the other things will all fall under when you reimagine the process. You have a roadmap of how to go about implementing it, and you can get this done effectively. Now, does it drive my cost up significantly in the short term? It doesn't have to. If you have the right partner and if you give them the freedom and work with them in outcome based models, which Sutherland does with our customers, where they are able to get the benefit of long term value with you, and you are able to get the benefit of long term value, the partner can do some of these investments effectively and drive value for you. So I would say all of this doesn't have to mean cost for you. You could work with a strategic partner that can help you drive value from this.
Yeah, and I think that one is so important because as we brought up earlier, the fact that the majority of organizations don't even know the detailed profiles about the customers they're serving. I mean, I don't care where they're being served, what channel, whether it's AI or humans, like it's not going to be personalized. It's not going to be anticipatory if you don't have that context. And it's not going to feel like you're building a real relationship. And you want to talk about generating value. You're not going to be able to say, well, you're on this plan, but we recommend you go to this other plan that, yes, it costs more, but you're going to get so much more out of it. Those kind of conversations are not going to happen in any sort of productive way. And so, kind of figuring out the data that's going to be necessary there is key. Additionally, we know that when you think about AI, which we're going to spend some time diving deeper into here, there's all those concerns about inaccuracies and inconsistencies and, hallucinations. And that's going to really require a robust data framework. Now, I love that you mentioned the power of partners. We're going to spend some time on that in a little bit, but I think it's very important to contextualize with AI that this is going to make the data framework so much more valuable. Back in today's environment, where pre-AI environment, sorry, where, okay, we know that knowledge entry is terrible, but I, as an agent, have solved the question 400 times. I know how to explain, okay, I know it says this, but what our real policy is that. But now that customers never talking to a person, when they're interacting with your chatbot and the chatbot's pulling from that knowledge entry and the knowledge entry doesn't make sense to them, there's no one to talk them through that. There's no one to cover for it. There's no one to explain it. There's no one to take a bad thing and turn it into a positive relationship. It just comes across as poor or confusing or frustrating for the customer. So as we get more autonomous, the importance of having a framework we can rely on is so much more important. And then when you want to talk about things like workflow automation, if your systems don't talk to each other, you're never going to have things properly automated. You're not going to be able to gather notes from a call and populate your CRM if your contact center and your CRM are not thoroughly integrated and if you don't have those automations across those workflows. So really important there. Now, I want to dive into AI. One of the things you really brought up here is using it as a way to generate value. Remember, you didn't say AI in the cost cutting segment. You brought it up for the value generation question that I had. And I think that's really important because I know that there's a lot of tendency to think, okay, AI can do this pretty much as well as a human, and it's kind of boring work anyway. So why don't we just automate it? And a lot of organizations are falling into that trap. But to me, that feels like the antithesis of customer centricity. So how do you maybe think about AI as what value am I generating for the contact center for the customer, as opposed to what efficiencies am I creating?
So there are a couple of ways to look at this, right? One is to look at how do we generate top line using data insights from the customer, which is again AI.
Yeah.
And in that there's a lot of some of them are around for a long time, like next best action and providing recommendations around cross-sell upsell to the agent when they are on the call with the customers. And that is one clear measure of how you could leverage AI. The second one is about and I'll give a couple of examples here to talk about, and these are both in the areas of customer satisfaction and performance improvement. From there, we go to some cost optimization examples as well. When it comes to, I'll talk about Spotify, which is a long-time customer of ours. We implemented a Translate AI solution to them. And while people may think that, oh, this is used for cost optimization, we did not replace agents with our technology solution there. We augmented our people who were servicing them, but we optimized the cost simultaneously by taking multiple languages to one location using AI tool. But it was not just cost optimization, that was one of the levers, but using the same set of agents to service across various languages. We brought in certain consistency in the processes, certain value through this approach, and it led to faster response time, stronger customer experience, and in the process, we were able to drive better value from each individual customer. So this is not about replacing human empathy, but it's a question of removing the language barrier, but helping empathy scale when there is a need there. That's one, but it's a case of both cost optimization and value optimization. But I'll talk about another scenario where we were looking at another customer. This is a fleet management company. They supply products for fleet management and safety of the fleet. And when they came to us about their customer experience transformation, we looked at the journey from customer outcomes, not cost outcomes. That's where we started. And we started understanding the journey through voice of customer interviews and journey mapping and translate those insights into quantifiable customer experience improvements. And then we did a end-to-end journey mapping across installation of the product, onboarding the customer, everyday use, troubleshooting, support escalation, went through the whole journey with that. And from that side, what we did was we talked to both the agents, product owners, program managers, everybody who face the pain points and repetitive low value inquiries, unclear device type of issues. And then we also talked to the customers and partners who are selling the products. By going through this journey, what we were able to come up with was we analyzed the real data, identified the journeys, and what we were able to do was deploy AI with measurable outcomes, which is about cutting time to answer for common questions by 30 to 50%. How do you reduce the customer effort by just simplifying their navigation and enabling intuitive self-service? We looked at reduction of support dependency by driving self-service efficiency. So, and then improving the installation process, verification, and troubleshooting. So, AI was woven in the entire process. You asked a simple AI question, but it is not standalone as a AI, but it is through the entire process you bring in the tools at various points. So we were able to drive outcomes for that, and then we were able to automate the predictable use cases with and high value cases with the tools, and kept human in control of ambiguous and emotional processes. That's how we were able to get to it. So you cannot look at any of these things as a tool journey versus customer journey. It is about how do you bring the two together to define an end-to-end process with AI interspersed at the right level. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think I would really break out your answer into two areas, right? So one is we need to stop thinking of AI as able to automate things we wish we didn't have to do, and instead look at AI as a way to do things we wish we could do if not for our existing resource constraints. So it's not, oh, that type of data analysis or that type of interaction, that's super boring and repetitive. Let's automate it without even thinking about the context. Instead, well, wait, what can I do to better understand my customers? What can I do to have a more productive conversation? How can I maybe reach out to customers in a way that I can't right now because I don't have the manpower for it? And what role can AI play in making that happen? That's how you deliver value at scale. The second part is not looking at everything in a binary sense of, is this task right for AI? Is this task right for humans? But instead look at how they work together. To optimize that, though, we still have to know what the unique strengths of AI are, but just as importantly, what the unique strengths of humans are. As we start to look at what roles humans can have, what are some unique advantages that you see them having? So even as we start to automate more, even as we start to use AI more, we know that when humans get involved, they're really making an impact and they're doing stuff that can't be automated right now.
Yeah, I think we talked about earlier. We talked about the high friction processes where humans are important to do that. The second one is about understanding your customer context, where relationship is extremely important, and where understanding the human emotions, AI is still not there at the level we would expect it to be. There are still gaps in terms of the AI to understand the human emotions, and relationship building part is another one where there's a significant gap. And these things come where you do selling products, right? Those are areas where there are a lot of cases where you do there are two parts to it. One is you do cross sell upsell when a customer contacts you for some other purpose. That's one part where you could still have some amount of AI to resolve some of it and then escalate, and there you could use the opportunity to cross sell upsell. But there are clearly certain outbound sales type of processes there. I think still human in the loop is very important. And then lastly, like I said, where you need to understand the emotions better, you would want those type of processes to have more human, highly empowered by data and highly empowered by knowledge from the system to deal with the customer.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned highly driven and empowered by data and knowledge. We talked about data earlier throughout the research, through some of your answers as well. I want to give you a chance here to walk through, not to sort of demystify this a little bit, not just say, oh, more data is better, because I think we fundamentally get that, but we know that there's ways to tailor that thinking. So, one, what does the appropriate intelligence strategy look like in this increasingly AI driven world? And two, maybe if you have any examples of sort of how we can take an insight that we uncovered and turn that into meaningful action for the customer experience.
So actually, a lot of data is not good for the agent necessarily, because if I'm dealing with a lot of data, I'm not going to answer the customer's question effectively. I'm looking for insights from the data, because the agent at the point of contact with the customer at the moment of truth is not going to have the ability to grab insights. He can double click through it, but he needs only insights available at that point of time. So and there are plenty of examples in terms of how we could leverage insights more effectively, both in the moment of truth and also otherwise. I'll give one example. um, when a customer comes in for a call with an agent, and the agent summarizes the call at the end of it, he's going to categorize the intent as something that he thought it was, which in most likelihood is not super accurate. The intent data you are better off capturing from the IVR choice through which the customer said, which is the customer's intent. And the second thing is, what we have found is, going through the transcription data, you get enormous amount of insights, not only about the particular contact but across the various customer contacts. And you will understand a lot more about what are the processes that are broken, where are the customers dissatisfaction, and that is over a significant sample of the population. You can find that your customer survey responses a lot of times are uh, not going to give you that kind of insight that you can generate out of going through your transcription data and gathering insights that can help you both in terms of your product service, like we discussed earlier, but also in terms of what are those processes that are broken, that have friction, what are the products that are not working well, and so on. That is one example of where we created a lot of value from the data by addressing the customer's need effectively. That's one. The second thing is, the more easier thing is to more effective thing in terms of value is the propensity of the customer to buy certain products, which products, how to sell, cross sell, upsell, which goes to an agent as an insight. When the customer agent is on a call with the customer, he or she can get insights about the based on the previous purchasing behavior of the customer, the interests of the customer. Here are the next two products that you could position to the customer, and that can drive top line value for you more effectively, while not being uh, in your face trying to hard sell all your products that are not relevant for the customer. How do you make it more valuable for the customer by choosing the right product to sell and knowing the context? So that is another important place where we have seen the value of the data going in very effectively. But last but not the least, but in the recent times, in many of our customer conversations that we are doing, we talk about transformation of their uh, customer experience journey. We talk about getting access to their data to effectively drive a few things. One is, of course, efficiency measures are standard, but the measures around customer long-term value, how can we create based on insights into their data about the product usage over the life, how to help them improve value from that, and how to drive value from that. So we are talking about that as part of our solution offering to our customers.
Yeah, I think that breakdown is so important right there. The reality is that so often when we rely on recapping a call, thinking about whether we solved it, we focus on the emotional state. Oh, that customer was really, really angry. They're a jerk. Or that customer was really, really angry, but I think I made them a little bit happier. And what we don't often look at is what really drove that. Was it a process? Was it an answer? Was it a specific line that caused that emotional state? Because that is the thing that we can address at scale. You're never going to come up with an exact science for making every single rude or upset customer smile in that moment. But what you can do is look at what processes, what answers, what policies, what products contribute to happy or unhappy customers and start to focus on those at scale. And that's a more scalable, more achievable way to improve the customer experience. And we saw from our data earlier, the fact that so many organizations are not identifying and addressing root causes really speaks to the missed opportunity here. And if we can use AI as well as really a data-driven mindset to start to address those, we're going to really be important. The second, I love the point that if we're focused on not just retention, not just satisfaction, but true loyalty and growing the relationship, then those future comments, those future offers, they need to feel personalized. Imagine if you were like, okay, I know my friend's birthday coming up, and I am going to buy him the world's biggest bag of gourmet peanuts. And that person has a peanut allergy. I'm not exactly a great friend because I spent a lot of money on this like gourmet bag of, this gourmet gift for them. I'm a bad friend because I didn't know them. And I feel like this happens so often in the customer service landscape, right? We design these offers and these marketing messages and these answers that we think are like inherently valuable, but we don't tailor it to what that individual customer wants in that moment. And so even though we put all of our marketing team behind it, we design this cool thing, it doesn't really resonate the way the customer's looking for it because it wasn't what they want. And so using AI to surface, okay, here is what this customer's going through. Here's who they are. Based on all that, here's what you as an agent should recommend, should pitch, should sell. That's going to lead to someone who not only closes more deals, but comes across as more respectful and knowing of that customer as well. And so that is really the heart, I think, of really where data goes from just facts about someone to actually empowering better outcomes and better relationships. Now, of course, it's easy to say, get better data, refine your insights, surface the right intelligence. We know that many organizations are not there yet, but we also know that this is an area where the right partner can play a huge role in starting to make this happen. So as we start to think about, the rise in customer experience standard, new technologies, the importance of data, what role does the right partner play in making this achievable?
I'll talk about a few things here. Partners play a very crucial role. I've seen some of the our enterprises that has made the best progress and achieved the best value from the customer experience centers are the ones that have leveraged the partners in a very effective way. Even if it's not just one, when there's an ecosystem of partners, 2, 3 partners, effectively give them a play where they could collaborate with them and drive value. And when I talk about that, there are a couple of aspects. You see a lot of customers dealing with the technology separate from the customers that are running operations. To me, that's not a recipe for success, or it's going to be very limiting in the future context. With what is happening with the rapid development of AI technology, a lot of value is going to get created over the next 2 to 3 years. And your existing contracts where you measure your partners on operations and transactions are going to be limiting because your cost could ramp down very fast, very exponentially if you have the right incentives for the partners to bring in the technology into the operations. Now, while you have a need to standardize across all partners the technology, but if you do not have the partners that are running operations to bring technology in or make the right technology recommendation, you're missing out on some crucial insights in terms of where and what technologies are best. I can give you plenty of examples. I was with another customer last week, and their technology team is saying, hey, we are busy, we have our plate full. Tell us what are the technology things you need. And where we were providing operations, we were giving some examples, and they were saying, I understand it's important, but we have our plate full, we can't address it. A lot of times, a lot of value gets lost when the operations team inside is not leveraged with technology. So the key thing is have a partner that can bring technology and into the operations to drive value and set up outcome-based contracts with those partners. Sutherland goes into most of our existing engagements, willing to cannibalize our own revenue for the right outcomes from technology perspective, and we do that. So look for partners that can drive value and commit to outcomes and drive long-term value for you. Incentivize them to do that, and hence they can drive the right value for you. Because over the next 1, 2, 3 years, depending on where you are in your maturity level, you could drive 30, 40, 50% value fairly easily by bringing in right technology, and also top line value by bringing in right insights and right technology. So I would say relook at your contracts, relook at your partnership models, and encourage your partners to play a crucial role in driving value for you. That's one key element I would bring to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously crucial. I think the days of, just sort of like empty promises or we're going to be the right partner, we have cool tech, that's not what we're looking for. There's a million outsourcing providers, a million tech providers out there that have great capabilities in theory. But the question is, are those capabilities aligned with what your organization looks for? That has to be the standard that we hold people to. So that's great advice. Now, one thing I do want to close with, though, is we often talk about finding the partner who's committed to your outcomes and your vision and your culture and your needs. That's of course true. And I'm sure it's something that you take very seriously at your organization, really wanting to be aligned with what the organization's looking for. But partnerships are a two-way street, right? We also know that it's equally important to really give the partner, the vendor, the provider, the visibility they need to make a difference. If you just say, we want you to increase our CSAT, go ahead and do it, and you don't give them any visibility into what's going on in your organization, they're not going to do the best job possible. So when you think about your partnerships, what does the right client do? What are some behaviors they can do to go from really giving you the pathway to succeed, giving you the right access, giving you the right immersion? What are some recommendations for a buyer, if you will, to maximize that partnership?
In fact, my previous answer had some of those elements towards the buyer, which is
Yeah.
don't look at your partner as a vendor and tell them, here are the 5 operational metrics, give me people, give me just technology. Don't do that, especially in the current times with the level of transformation. Make sure your partner has freedom to propose the right outcomes for you and commit to the outcomes, put skin in the game, encourage them with models by which they are able to do the right thing, but in the process get rewarded for it. Sometimes the right thing is losing revenue for a partner, but encourage them by rewarding them for that so they can do the right thing. So one is that. Second thing is, like I said, sometimes you may not want to be just working with one partner. You may want to have 2 or 3 partners. Some of the best customer examples I've seen, providing, uh, making the 2 or 3 partners feel like one extended team with you, that extended team feeling. And within the premises of that customer, we work with our competitors like we are one team. And to create that level of security between your competitors, not getting them to compete with each other. There has to be competition, healthy competition in terms of performance, sharing performance scorecards and all of that. That's a good thing. But don't make them go at each other to get a share of the business. Give them clear view of what they'll be doing and encourage them to be a true extended team. That will be another good value in the current times. Third piece I would say very, very useful is when you bring these partners, we talked about not just operations, not just technology, but take them through the journey of defining your customer experience journey along with you, co-innovate, co-create, co-ideate to drive value, because you will get maximum out of your partners by doing that, and integrating them, having them strategic accountability in your outcomes and results will give you a lot of success with the partners. Obviously, not every partner uh, can play the role. Not every partner can look at it in such a trusted way. So pick the right partner that can do that for you, and that's where you will find maximum success.
I think those are great tips here. So as we wrap up, sure, anything you want to close with, any final like recommendations, any stories you want to share as we wrap up?
I think we are living in one of the most exciting times when it comes to bringing operations technology to drive the outcomes, and we talked about it all of the last 45 minutes, and you covered beautifully with your example. I'll just close it with one example. Actually, one of the world's largest telecom providers, they needed to modernize their order management, field support, and back office operations to reduce costs, improve scalability, enhance customer experience. Uh, we deployed SMEs to capture the data through audits, through questionnaires and all that stuff. we uncovered a lot of legacy manual processes, creating order followed issues, repeat contacts, high reliance on field visits. But we also found that there are a lot of siloed functions. The field functions were not looking at what the care function was looking at. Care function was disconnected from the others. So there was clearly a need for re-engineering the entire flow, from order management to provisioning to reducing the fallout and manual rework. Uh, and 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 there was also the field service side. We had to do the triaging of the support, improving installation, but there were bigger costs. You were trying to optimize the cost of calls, but the truck rolls were more expensive. How do you optimize the truck rolls, right? And reducing the cost from that. So there is a significant amount of silos in functions that were costing the customer. So when we looked at the entire journey, we had to redefine the whole journey. We had to bring in technology at the right level, doing the deflection of the voice calls, cutting the resource needs. We were able to drive uh, roughly $10 million in savings, about 28% reduction in contact rate, 20% of the voice calls deflected to chat. We were able to do some of those things very effectively by looking at the process holistically. And throughout this conversation, if you hear my comments, it's all about end-to-end process, looking at the right place of technology in this, and taking ownership on the outcomes is where the key is. And we can talk about multiple examples across industries to drive that. So I want to leave with that one thought, which is when you're looking at transformation, especially with a lot of technology that's available, take an end-to-end view of it and try to drive value from every part of the process and every part of the technology that you could get. And that's where you have your success.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to summarize that up. And I think if we really start to walk through the closing narrative here, it's this notion that first, define value properly. Don't look just for the easy outcomes, the blanket context-free retention rate or satisfaction score. Look at what really demonstrates the value and the impact you're making on the customer's terms. Once you set that objective, then you could dive into data that will let you know, why aren't you there? How does a customer want you to get there? And what opportunities do you have for bridging the gap? So is it more about addressing current inefficiencies? Is it more about elevating the experience, being more personal, refining offers? Look at the data to let you know where those gaps exist. Once you understand where you're trying to go and what's standing in the way of you getting there, that's when you really look at that balance of what technology can help you. How do humans need to evolve to make the most of that technology? And what role can partners play in supporting that endeavor? That's how you start to think about everything. It's start with value and let data be the guiding light to get you to that point of value and go from answering questions and processing transactions to building relationships. I want to thank you and the Sutherland team so much, not only for today's discussion, but also for partnering with us on what has been such a phenomenal research report, really illuminating as far as what empathy looks like, what relationships look like as the way we connect with our customers is changing so much. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian, for a wonderful conversation, and thanks for the great research as well.
Definitely. And for all of you who joined us, thanks so much for your commitment to, as 2026 kicks off, taking customer contact to the next level. We can't wait to talk to you next time.